What's up, sons? It's Blind Rod with Son of a Tech once again, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Corsair Obsidian 500D mid-tower ATX case, so stick around. Now, Corsair flaunts this as one of their new cases that is for enthusiasts. And while typically you think enthusiast as a positive thing, we're going to bring up how that kind of makes this case a little negative for some builders. However, overall the case does end up being quite good. You just need to keep some things in mind, and if you're an expert kind of PC modder or builder, you're going to find lots of things to love here. Now, official support for Radiators is pretty slim. You're going to have a 360 rad in the front with a 280 on the top. My biggest complaint with this particular case is the bracket mounts for the front and the top are exactly the same. Now, I haven't test fit yet two 360 rads, but as soon as I get both of those two 360 rads in, which I'm planning on putting in here, I'll start test fitting. However, I'm going to need to source a bracket, and in this case I might actually order an entire second case just to get that bracket, as Corsair support's not getting back to me on just ordering the front bracket, but we'll find out a way around all of that, of course. The biggest complaint aside, we're going to be having pretty much all the rest of the features that you would expect, including fan filters on the top, front, and bottom for the power supply. You're going to have a power supply shroud, but here's another portion where, when I'm saying for enthusiasts primarily, this is where you kind of start getting some of those negative vibes. The shroud is shorter, and this is actually advantageous if you're planning on mounting, like, let's say a pump res combo to the front radiator, because you don't want that shroud going all the way across and blocking that pretty sight. However, if you're kind of doing a standard build like we currently have in the case right now, and you aren't doing anything like custom cables and you're just going to go with the cables that came with your power supply, it's going to be a tight fit on the back side. Now, this wouldn't typically be a problem if we were talking about a case that's just going to have a steel back panel, but in this particular case we have a tempered glass back panel, so you're going to be showing it off. While there is a cable management sliver, it's also quite small, so between the shorter power supply shroud and the small cable trim there, if you're going with standard length cables that are not specifically cut for the size and you haven't taken the measurements previously to building in the rig, then you're going to have some issues kind of tucking those away. We are able to do it pretty well with this particular build, and in here we have a 1950X, so we do have two CPU power plugs, including two additional CPU power plugs, I should say, and the 24 pin, and we have two 8 pins coming out of there, so we have quite a bit going on, as well as all the RGB for 4 of the Corsair SP RGB fans, the 120s, and we have the controller back there, and we are able to clean it up pretty well. Of course, in this case, like all cases, you're going to want a longer power cable, CPU additional power for that top left one, and that's something you're gonna that's pretty much any mid-tower case, any ATX case in general. So you order a longer one so you can tuck it down into the corner and then bring it back up and just use some tie downs. Obviously, I didn't actually have any custom cut cables. We're going to order an extra long one for that particular run to make sure that we can hide it, because what I'd like to do on the back side is actually put some LEDs back there so you can see the cable management, and I think that will be pretty neat. That's also why I say this case isn't quite like, if this is your first time building a PC, because of the restraints and kind of the nuances revolving around this case, including the shorter power supply mount and the restrictive back with the glass panel that's going to expose all your shoddy cable management, you might want to look elsewhere. But if you're actually looking at this to do a PC mod in, provided we can figure out the issue with the top rad mount, because a 280 and a 360 in the front never really looks that good, at least in my humble opinion, because you're not running even, then if we can get around that, or you're just doing a single 360 in the front, I think you're going to have a really good time. It also does make it very, very easy for you to install fans and radiators in the top and the front. As the bracket does remove, you just screw it in. And then it has 2 notches that you slide the bracket into, and then 2 screws on the outside of the case for you to screw it down with. On the rear, you do have support for 3 SSD mounts and 2 regular HDD mounts, so old school hard drive mounts. We aren't particularly going to be using them, and I didn't actually use them, so I can't speak to the actual quality of them. But if it has anything similar to do with any other Corsair case that I've built in the past, they're going to be perfectly fine. Now, to speak to front I/O, you're going to have 2 USB 3.0, and then you're going to have a USB-C, so the super speed, and then you're just going to have the very basic power button and HD audio. Now, because of where they put the cutout for the cables going to the bottom of the motherboard, if you're going to be mounting the GPU horizontally and not vertically up and down like it does support, I might mention, then you're going to be able to see those cables running atop of the power supply shroud headed over to that far side for the HD audio. So you might not even want to install it, or you at least want to hop on somewhere like V1 Tech that has some cable extensions that clean those cables up, as well as the front IO header cables up, and at least braids them so you can make them look a little bit better. But those are all things you want to keep in mind, because you're not going to actually be able to feed them through anywhere else but through that one slot that's on the far right of the power supply shroud. The only other concern I heard about the case was the clearance between the top part, which is more aesthetic built around aesthetics here, and that the breathing room might not be good for a top mounted radiator. And I could see how that could be true, and I'm sure there'll be further testing done on this. I did not actually do any testing on it. In the particular configuration that we have right now, we're doing the standard positive pressure with 3 fans in the front and a single 120 in the rear, and then the Threadripper is air cooled with an Arctic Freezer 33 TR. So that's how it's currently configured. I think it turned out pretty well, but we have a lot of empty space. I think this particular build is made for specifically a 360 front rad, and then mounting, like we're going to be doing, a pump res combo to the front right here. So provided this is what you're doing, then it's going to fill it out and make it look real nice. I think if you're just going to be going for a regular build, it might be a little bit overkill, and I'd still point towards something like the NZXT or even a Fractal case, mid-tower case. It has maybe a little bit more aesthetics with the cable management on the right side there, and has the full power supply shroud to go ahead and cover up, you know, any cables that you have for possibly even like a semi-modular power supply, or if you just aren't going to be buying custom cables. So that kind of covers it from my perspective, the positives and negatives. There's a lot good here. There's a lot that you want to question, and just like with any other case, it's very subjective. So if you guys have any opinions or questions or concerns about this particular case, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. As far as everything else, it went in fine. The motherboard was easier to put in this than, say, something that has the cable management on the inside of the case, because I actually was able to do it with that rear fan mounted still. So that's kind of nice that it's all flat all the way back there. So keeping that in mind, that's kind of cool. This will be in the description below. I purchased this case for a client, so it's all out of my pocket. We didn't get any kind of free samples or anything here on this one. So full disclosure on that in particular, and I'll see you next Tuesday.